All right. We're looking good here. Can everybody see? Okay. Give me a thumbs
Yes,
up or just nod your heads. Okay. Yep. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started then with tonight's workshop. And I'm so glad you're here to join me this evening. My name is Kristen Sloan. I am an Ally Center Student Support Specialist here at Lancaster Bible College. And I think this is my third workshop that I've led. So I'm kind of the new kid on the block, so to speak. But I want to welcome you here tonight. We're going to talk about understanding and reading college assignments. And so I thought, some of you have probably been away from the classroom for a while. And when you first come on to Canvas and figure out and navigate your way around Canvas, a lot of the time it probably feels like you are trying to crack some sort of mysterious code to understand what you're being asked to do in a given assignment. And so that's the purpose behind tonight's session. I'm going to periodically be kind of checking back in to make sure that everybody is in the room. There we go. So you're going to see me jumping back and forth here. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And if anybody pops in the waiting room, I will do my best to get them in. And tonight's session is being recorded. You will get this video link once it's uploaded and ready to go. And then I will also send you these slides as well so that you can have them to reference back to. All right, so let's start first of all with an opening prayer. And the scripture I want to use tonight is Psalm 119, 130. And this is just a small portion of this verse. And it says, "The unfolding of your words gives light." And so as we kind of start talking about how to unpack assignments and determine what you're being asked to do, I just thought that we should look towards scripture, right? And let that be our guide here. And so as we work through tonight's examples and activities, it's my hope that you'll also remember to seek first the Lord in all your endeavors. The unfolding of his words gives light. So if you'll bow your heads with me, I'm going to go ahead and pray really quickly, and then we'll jump into the agenda for tonight. Father God, we just thank you for this time together in this virtual space. Lord, I pray that it would be a blessing to everyone here. I pray that they would walk away with some practical strategies and tips that they can use in their own studies. And Lord, I just pray that everything that we do and say here tonight would bring you glory. Lord, we thank you for this chance to join here together, and we pray all this in your holy name. Amen. Amen. Okay, I'm jumping back in again periodically. I'm going to check and make sure I don't have anybody in the waiting room. Okay, we're good. All righty. So tonight's agenda, it's a four-part agenda. So we're going to do a little bit of a welcome and an introduction. I've got a question for you to hopefully kind of share your experiences. And then we'll begin looking at understanding assignments by looking at the anatomy of assignment instructions. So there's kind of a system of parts that are involved in every assignment that you have in Canvas. And not just here at LBC, but just in general. When you have an assignment from an instructor, there's certain parts that are typical. And so we'll break those down and look at those together. And then we'll look at some keywords. And this is the part of the workshop where we determine and break down what professors are actually asking you to do in these sometimes what can seem like big, long assignment instructions. And then we'll finish tonight with a couple of quick practices with some real assignments. Now, some of the practice that we'll do is with just fictional, hypothetical type assignments, but we will take a good long look at an assignment from FAS 100. So if there's anybody in here, which we'll get to this point, who's taking FAS, then you'll see this assignment later in the course. Okay. So objectives for tonight. So by the end of this session, it is my goal for you to be able to identify the components, common components of assignment instructions, to decode, right? To see these keywords and understand, okay, this is what that's wanting me to do, right? It's not a mystery any longer. We're like, it's clear. And then last objective is for you to be able to put into practice what you've learned here tonight with a real assignment prompt. And then even looking further, be able to put into practice what you're learning here with your future assignments. All right. Do we have any questions before we get started today? I have a little icebreaker here for you in a minute or so. Are there any questions? You guys can feel free to come on mic. You can type it in the chat. Okay. Checking back in. All right, our waiting room looks good. Okay. So let's go ahead and jump in. This is kind of a think and share moment. I like to do this at the beginning just to just break the ice, right? Get us to know each other. So, what's the most confusing assignment instruction you've seen? And so when you answer this, if you're brave enough to answer on mic, what made it confusing? How did it make you feel because you were confused by it? And then what do you remember most about those instructions or that assignment? So do I have any volunteers? This is the hard part, right? Being brave enough to share.
I'd like to volunteer. My name is
Okay, let's
Rosanna.
see. Okay, hang on. Share your name with us. I'm going to come back on screen so I can see. Is this Rosanna?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. All right, go ahead and share with us.
I am 53. I'm sorry if you hear a lot of background noise. I'm actually in a truck stop. I'm an over-the-road truck driver and I drive night, so I'm getting ready to go on shift. But I'm
Okay,
gonna stay on the Zoom. I'm just gonna mute myself that way you can't hear everything.
that's
But
that's perfectly fine.
the whole get to know you thing, I put my paper that I was writing in the video section in the video and the paper, so I was so confused. And I tell you
Right.
what, our professor is great, and she kind of held my hand and she told me, okay, you take it step one, step two, step three. Don't be jumping around and going all willy-nilly because it won't work. And that really
Yes.
helped.
Yes. That and we're going to talk about that exact concept here in a little bit. So I'm glad that you shared that.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else want to share? What's the most confusing assignment instruction you've seen? Christopher, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I'm wondering if let's see. Can anybody else hear Christopher? No? Okay. All right. Would anybody else like to share?
Does it have to be pertaining to like LBC or could it be
No, not necessarily. Nope, not at all.
okay? Hi guys, my name's Gina. Um,
Hello.
it was years ago, I was going to school for electronic health records management, and our final paper we had to do was on ourselves. So it was like 15 pages. And it was like describe a song that you would be, describe a color, describe a food, and describe like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, because of the way that she worded it was just so hard to get. Like I had to ask her like 20 questions, well, actually more than that, because I didn't understand exactly what the tone was of the paper because it was just like describe yourself as a fruit, a song, a color, and then I forget a season maybe. And
Right.
because it wasn't clarified and there was no clarity to it, I was just so. And then it was the 15 pages. Well, my son decided to jump on the computer and I didn't hit save. So it's like 7 pages.
Oh,
My son, yeah, it all erased anyway. So but
right.
that's that. But because there wasn't no clarification in what exactly what it was. So yeah, when it came
Right.
besides the 15 pages, I was like super confused.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like maybe the purpose why you had to write about that wasn't maybe clear. And so that also kind of probably left you feeling a little in the dark there. Thank you for sharing that, Gina. Anyone else? Janice, I see you're unmuted. Would you like to share?
Nope, I just did.
Oh, that was Janice? Oh,
No, I'm Jan.
oh, there you go. Okay. Okay.
I'm unmuted because I was trying to get my earbuds linked to my laptop so that everybody in my house doesn't have to be in the class. But forget it. It didn't work. I'm technology challenged and so forth. So, for me, it's just a really blanket statement. I am 69 years old.
Hmm.
And my attention span is almost nil as far as
Hmm.
retaining something. So what I find with assignments that I'm reading them 4 and 5 times to make sure that I really read what I read
Right.
and that I have the detail of it. But I'm pretty sure that once I get into the groove of this, that will improve. It's just using brain cells that haven't been used for a minute. So I haven't run into any really, really hard stories with assignments yet.
Okay, good, good. And I
Thank
think you'll
you.
find that you will get better with this. And just like you said, brain cells that you haven't used, it's just, I mean, your brain is a muscle, you know? And so if you think about when like your muscles don't grow unless you stretch them, you know, unless you essentially you're breaking down the muscle fiber, right? You're breaking
Yes.
your brain in order to grow bigger muscles. And so if you feel like your brain is breaking with all the new information, that's good. That's good. That's where
I
the growth
do.
yeah, exactly. Thank you, Janice.
Can you hear me
Okay.
now, Kristen?
Yes, there you go. Hello, Christopher.
Um, so one of the big things that I had as far as the challenge goes is like they have the assignment of like the line that says week one, and
Yeah,
then over on the other side it has assignments. Well,
yes.
in the week one, it only had so much stuff, and my professor was like, "I want y'all to go in here and do all these." And then when I went over to the assignments, I still had two other things that was not included in week one. I thought I was done. I went over here and I'm like, wait a minute, I still got these two other assignments to do that are not in that lineup. So I just would like to caution everybody to remember to look at both. Because yeah, the week one or week two or week eight or whatever it is has all these assignments and the explanations from the professors, but sometimes there's more to it over on the assignment side that you need to go in and double check that you got everything done.
Yeah. And that's a great point because there are times where one assignment or one assignment link in like week one, you'll have two separate submissions. And so you'll think, oh, I'm done. But then, like Christopher said, when you go over and look at the assignments, you'll realize maybe one of those links, there were two things to submit. Now, that doesn't happen a ton, but that is a great point and something to be aware of. So would anybody else like to share before we move on? It kind of sounds like I'm hearing a pattern. Most confusing assignments is where instructions were unclear or where you weren't sure of the purpose behind why or behind the assignment. Why am I doing this? That's kind of a common theme here. Anyone else? Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and let's start talking about the anatomy of the assignment prompt. Now, realize this is not like the end all be all etched in stone, right? This is just kind of a general components, right? Most assignments are going to have these six parts. Okay, you may see something here and there that's got a couple of different things attached, but for the most part, your assignment is going to have six components, and those are going to be a purpose. Okay, that's why you're doing it, a task, an audience, a format, requirements, and then an evaluation or a rubric. LBC uses rubrics, so you'll hear me use that word a lot. And so we're going to look at each of these six components, and we're going to start first by looking at the purpose of the assignment. So the purpose is why your professor is giving you this task. And so a lot of times in the instructions, you'll see that the purpose is to demonstrate something that you've learned, or the purpose might be to develop certain skills. Okay, maybe it's your writing skills. If you're in FAS 100, it's or LAN 100 or LAN 101. Those are kind of the three foundational courses, and they develop writing skills through progressing through each of those. And then another purpose, it might be just to apply something that you've learned, an application task. The bottom line with the purpose is don't be afraid to ask your professor if you don't understand the purpose. And I loved, Gina, I think it was you that gave the example, right? I'm writing this 10-page paper about all these different things and why? Like, why am I doing this? I don't understand. Ask your professors. They are grateful when you ask for clarification. Second component of any assignment is going to be the task. So the task is what you're being asked to do or what you're being asked to create. Your task can be found in the instructions, which we will take a look at here in a few minutes. And when you're trying to figure out the task, you want to pay attention to action verbs. And so, like, I'm an English teacher, right? So action verbs, my bread and butter here. Those are the words. What are you being asked to do, right? Write, compare, that sort of thing. A tip here is to make a checklist of the tasks that you need to do to complete the assignment. And I will show you what that looks like. I'm going to walk you through all of the steps of this in just a minute. And then the third component, right, the anatomy of an assignment prompt, is the audience. So the audience is who will be reading your work. And sometimes this kind of seems like a given, right, in a college assignment. You're like, well, duh, it's my professor. But if you've noticed, you also have discussion prompts. And yes, your professor is reading those, but also your classmates are reading those. Okay, it's a discussion, a back and forth dialogue. So it's just important to keep in mind and try to determine who is my audience for this. If it's not my instructor and it's not my peers, then is it a specific group? What is their knowledge level? Okay, if it's my peers, we are learning together. If it's my instructor, the understanding is that I'm speaking to someone who knows this information already. So knowing your audience ensures that your writing is clear, that your writing is effective, and that what you write is relevant to the assignment that you're being given. Okay, so the format, that's the next component of assignments. So the format is what the deliverable looks like. And so whenever I talk about deliverables, I always tell my students, like, if you slid it across to me on a desk and said, here, look at this, okay, what's the format? Is it an essay? Is it a book report? Is it an email? Okay, in your case, it's probably going to be a discussion post, some sort of paragraph or paragraphs, or an essay, right? That's typically the format of the assignments you guys will have. Another way or consideration with the format is this informal? Is it formal? Is it academic? Is it non-academic? Again, typically your discussion posts will be informal academic, and your essays and other assignments that you're submitting not in the discussion forum, those are going to be more formal academic. So again, when you're looking at format, you want to look for the what and look for the how to identify it, okay? And then we've got requirements, okay? So the requirements of an assignment, how am I being required to format, right? We just talked about format. Requirements are going to talk about length, font, size. You're going to see, by and large, in your LBC courses, Times New Roman size 12, Times New Roman size 12. Length is going to vary according to the type of assignment. Another aspect of requirements is going to be citations, okay? In-text citations, works cited, MLA. You guys will use MLA, but if you are in like a psychology course, for example, like a social sciences course, you'll use APA formatting. But most courses will have similar requirements for their assignments. And again, in your case, it will most likely be MLA. And then the evaluation component. This is how the instructor is going to grade the assignment. So typically it's going to be, you're going to be given a rubric in your LBC courses. Rubrics will be attached to the bottom of the assignment instructions. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of an assignment, you'll see the rubric if there is one. And then typically you're given some sort of point value, okay? So again, look for the rubrics at the bottom of the assignment instructions. That's where you can find that. And these are the 6 components of most assignments. So before we look at this example, are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions before we move on? And if I'm going too quickly, if there's anything you're not clear on, feel free to raise your hand or interrupt me. Okay, moving on. All right, so we're going to look at this example right here. This is a personal narrative with reflection, okay? So it says, write a 3 to 4 page personal narrative in which you describe an experience that significantly shaped your understanding of education, identity, or community. In addition to telling the story, reflect on how the event connects to at least one concept discussed in weeks 1 through 3 of class. Use MLA format and include a works cited page if referencing course texts. Your narrative should be engaging, well-structured, and written for an audience of your peers. Okay, so let's take a look and break down this assignment prompt into those 6 components, all right? So we're going to look first at, the purpose. My slide wouldn't advance. So I underlined and put in red the purpose of the assignment, okay? So if if you have a highlighter and you're looking at your assignments, which I guess you won't because it'll be online, write, describe, reflect on how an event connects to one concept discussed in weeks 1 through 3 of class. That's why I'm doing this assignment, okay? This is the purpose behind it. And now we're going to move on, okay? In blue, you'll see the task that you're being asked to do. And notice if I go back and forth between the last slide and this slide, do you see how there's some overlap there in the assignment pieces? Okay. So the task you're being asked to do is write a personal narrative, describe an experience that significantly shaped your understanding of education, identity, or community, reflect on how the event connects to at least one concept discussed. Okay. That's what you're being asked to do. So again, here's the purpose, right? Describe, reflect on how events connect. Okay. The tasks you're being asked to do, write a personal narrative, describe an experience that significantly shaped your understanding of X, Y, and Z, reflect on how the event connects to at least one concept discussed. There's overlap. You're going to see overlap in a lot of these components. All right, let's look at the third component, which is who is my audience? Okay. Your narrative should be written for an audience of your peers. Now, not all of your assignments are going to say this outright. Okay. Some of this you're just going to have to infer or assume that the audience is your professor or your peers. Okay. Like if you're writing an essay and submitting it, like the audience is your professor. Okay. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes, I should say that. I say that like it's a blanket statement. That's not necessarily the case. But for our purposes, we'll go with that. All right, let's look at the format. Okay, so the format, it's a personal narrative. Now, a personal narrative is typically less formal than academic, but that does not mean that it's not well written. And so that's something I also teach high school students. And that's something, one of the first things we talk about is just because this is an informal or a reflective essay, it doesn't mean that it's not a well-written essay. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, and again, the other part of the format, it's engaging, well-structured, and written for an audience of your peers. All right, let's move on. The next is requirements. This is the next component, right, of all those prompts. So requirement, again, there's still some overlap. 3 to 4 pages, MLA format, and include a works cited page. So those are requirements you're being asked to make sure you include. And then evaluation, right? So again, most writing assignments are going to have a rubric attached. This is a snippet because it was longer than I had space to screenshot. But this is a snippet of one category from an FAS 100 assignment. This is the rubric, what it will look like. It will have more than just the critical thinking category. There will be other, if you continue to scroll down on the page where this rubric was, you would see there's multiple categories. But if you look at this rubric, okay, so the category is critical thinking. Are you thinking deeply about the content in relation to your experience, perspective, and prior knowledge? And then it delineates if you show a willingness to think deeply about the course content, if your response is unique, drawing on personal experiences and knowledge, if you have thought beyond the course content in your response, you get 10 points. That's considered an exemplary aspect. Let's go down here. If you don't turn it in, it's 0 points. Okay. And I want to point that out because if you submit the assignment, okay, you're going to get at least 6 points on the critical thinking category. And I don't know, I just felt like that's worth pointing out to students. Some people are like, oh, I don't want to get a 0, but if you put forth some effort, you're going to get some points. I just want you to pay attention to that on the rubrics. Okay, so having said all that, if you look at that 6 point category, which would be considered, your response is considered lacking, You show a lack of critical thinking altogether. You may have submitted just to turn something in, but nothing indicates concentrated thought. Okay. So again, if you submit something, you're going to get at least 6 points on that category. I always encourage my students, aim for the 10, right? We want to aim for the sky here. Have you guys had any, do you guys know what I'm talking about with the rubrics? Have you had a chance to see those on your assignments?
Yes, I have.
Okay, good, good. Like I said, with LBC, they are almost always attached at the very bottom. So, and you'll see, again, some overlap in the rubrics from assignment to assignment. They're kind of worded the same.
Yeah, I think all of mine have.
Yeah, have they been? Good, good. All right, so we've looked at the anatomy of an assignment. Let's look at what professors are actually asking by identifying some keywords, okay? So whenever you're looking at the instructions, you're going to see two different kinds of words. You're going to see action words. Those are the verbs that I was talking about earlier. And these are the words that really kind of give you clues about the type of writing you will do. So you might see words like analyze or summarize or argue or compare, right? And so whenever you see these terms, it's just important. So like analyze means I am breaking down information into parts. Okay. So if you're a visual person, think of a car engine. Okay. If I'm analyzing a car engine, what I'm doing is I'm tearing it apart, right, into all its separate components, and I'm looking at those components individually. The opposite of that would be to synthesize, where I take all the engine components and put them together and then, you know, discuss how it works, how all those separate parts work as a whole. But we're not going to synthesize tonight. We're just looking at analyze. Summarize, right? If you summarize something, you're giving a brief condensed explanation of the main idea, okay? Argue in this case is not yell at your colleagues, yell at your classmates. It's take a stance on an issue, okay? Take a stance, argue your points, provide some evidence. That's what argue means. And then compare, right? Compare, what are the similarities, what are the differences between two different concepts. So these are action words just to be aware of, because you will see them in lots of assignment prompts in your classes. The other type of word you want to look for are product words. So these are the actions that you will take to complete the assignment, okay? So as you're reading, look for words like, and as I tell you these, you're probably like thinking, well, duh, but I'm telling you, before I knew all this, sometimes it was hard for me to you know, like decipher what I was being asked to do to complete an assignment. So anyway, as you're reading, you're going to see words like write or draft or create or design. And again, this is not an exhaustive list of product words. These are just common words that you will see, okay? Discuss, that sort of thing. Okay, and then another component here that we want to talk about, keywords, is scope, okay? So the scope is the extent of the assignment or what's included in the work. So as you're reading, okay, take note of, and when I say reading, what I mean is the assignment prompt, okay? As you're reading the instructions, if there's something that says discuss, right? If you're being asked to discuss, which you will be in your discussion prompts, you're having a conversation with your audience. In this case, it would be your peers, your classmates, about a topic. And typically that topic will be something that contained in that week's readings, okay? Look for words like explore. If you see explore, you're working through a topic logically, okay? Explore what it means to integrate your faith into your learning, okay? If you're in FAS 100, that might be a familiar question to you. And then explain, okay? Explain is another common scope, right? Explain just means to make a topic clear by giving details about how or why it happened, okay? So again, we've got action words, okay? Those are the words that give you clues about the type of writing you'll do. We've got product words, actions you'll take to complete the assignment, and then the scope. Okay, that's the extent or what's included in the work. Am I discussing? Am I exploring? Am I explaining? Am I comparing, etc.? Okay. Any questions before we go on to the next activity? I know I'm kind of throwing a lot of information out into the cyberspace of Zoom. Okay. All right. And as always, I'll just remind you too, I am recording, so you'll get this when we're done. So you can come back and review. Okay, so let's identify the verbs. So this is a hypothetical prompt from an application essay. In other words, applying what was learned. Okay. So it says, using a sociological concept covered in class, such as social norms, deviance, or socialization, write a 750 to 900 word essay analyzing a real world example from the media, your personal experience, or current events. Clearly explain the concept and show how it applies to your example. Include at least 2 scholarly sources and follow APA formatting guidelines. So again, this is from a sociology class, social sciences. They do not use MLA, they use APA, which is why it's saying follow APA guidelines. Okay, so let's identify the verbs here. Remember, verbs are those action words, okay? So I've got using, write, analyze, explain, show, include, and follow, okay? And I put them on a handy dandy post-it note just to emphasize that those are our verbs in this prompt. And so identifying those verbs, again, is going to give you clarity. Okay, I'm using, I'm writing, I'm analyzing, I'm explaining, I'm showing, I'm including, I'm following, right? As you work through that assignment, then you know, okay, I'm analyzing, right? I'm breaking apart and identifying and exploring concepts, not the whole, but how they work individually. Now, some quick tips, okay? When you're reading an assignment prompt, read the assignment instructions. And I say that as like from experience, okay? Because I am one of those people, like when I have a lot of work in front of me, sometimes I just want to get it done, right? And so I like to employ what I think are really top-notch skimming skills, but sometimes that has come back to bite me in the behind. So read the assignment instructions out loud if you have to. I have to read them out loud because it forces me to slow down and pay attention. And then read them again, okay? And then ask yourself, okay, what is the goal of this assignment? What is the deliverable? If the goal or the deliverable is not clear yet, again, feel free to reach out to your professor. Okay, what should this look like when I'm done? Am I writing an essay here? Am I writing a paragraph? What's the goal of this assignment? Am I analyzing concepts that we've discussed? Am I comparing? Am I, synthesizing? Just feel free to reach out and ask if those aren't clear. All right. So this is the moment you've all been waiting for. This is an actual FAS 100 assignment. So this is not till I think week 5, but the assignment is called How Does College Level Writing Look? Okay. How many of you, just you can either say yes, me, or type it in the chat. How many of us are in FAS 100 right now?
I am.
Asia, you are? Okay. Anybody
Yes.
else?
I am as well. Yeah,
Okay.
I am as well.
Okay, good. So several FAS 100s, probably some LAN 100s, maybe LAN 101.
Yes, ma'am. The LAN 101 or LAN 100 also.
Okay, good. And then, there's obviously more classes at LBC than just that. But those of you who are in FAS 100 now, those of you who have already been in FAS 100, okay, LAN 101, good. You will recognize this assignment. Okay, those of you who've already had this course and those of you who are in it currently, you'll see it in a few weeks. Okay, so let's look at this assignment. It says, we will begin our writing focused week by collaborating with classmates to identify characteristics of effective writing. Please read 2 sample essays on the Roman Empire. Okay, and then we've got our 2 links to the sample essays. As you read, take note of what seems to be effective and what seems to be ineffective or unclear in the writing. Initial posts. Now that you've finished reading both essays, in your initial post, address the following prompts. List 3 characteristics of effective writing that stand out to you and explain why you believe these traits are worth your classmates' consideration. List 3 characteristics of ineffective writing that stand out to you and explain why you believe they are ineffective. Responses. Read the posts of your classmates, then respond to 2 classmates in a post that addresses the following. Identify at least one connection, in other words, a common item or a similarity connecting point between the list you composed and your classmates' list. Based on those lists of effective and ineffective writing created by you and this classmate, write a one-sentence takeaway principle about writing well at the college level. Your initial post is due on Wednesday at 11:59. All replies are due by Saturday at 11:59. So, looking at this assignment, right, that's a big, long description, okay? Big, long description. And so this can be intimidating, right? I can't tell you how many students I've had come into the Ally Center needing clarification or help on this assignment. And what we end up discovering most of the time is they just misunderstood what they were being asked to do, okay? So that's kind of why I chose this assignment. Just, I don't know, you're getting a head start, right? You're getting a little advantage here. So let's break down this assignment and look at all of those 6 components that we've learned so far, okay? Starting with our purpose. So our purpose for this assignment, why am I not advancing here? There we go. The purpose, okay, is to collaborate with classmates to identify characteristics of effective writing. Okay, that's why you're doing this. You're collaborating with your classmates, identifying characteristics of effective writing. Okay, that second component was the task. All right, the task is several places here because this is a big assignment. So, read 2 sample essays. Take note of what seems to be effective and ineffective. Excuse me. Then, you're going to write your initial post. Okay, after you've written your initial post, you're then going to respond to 2 of your classmates. So that's, in a nutshell, that's the task you're being asked to do. All right. Who is my audience? Okay, you're collaborating with classmates. So this is kind of one of those examples where, excuse me, sorry, I have a tickle in my throat from talking. This is one of those examples where it's not going to say, your audience is your classmates. You just infer it because it says you're collaborating with classmates. It's a discussion post, okay? Okay, format, okay? It's a post. So when we think back to that format and the characteristics, right? We've got informal, formal, academic, okay? This is a discussion post. So it's going to be more of an informal academic response, okay? Again, that does not mean that it is poorly written. All right. Requirements. Okay, what are the requirements here for me? Well, the first is that my initial response is due Wednesday. My replies are due Saturday. Okay. Again, requirements that overlap I talked about. Requirements can also be seen as list 3 characteristics of this, 3 characteristics of that, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm kind of separating those 2 for you guys, okay? And I'm saying that list 3 of this and 3 of that, that's more of the task, okay? Requirement is this needs to be turned in, your initial post by this date, your response by this date. All right, and then the evaluation. So I didn't put, there's not a rubric for this discussion, but on the discussion posts, typically you post your initial post, you respond to 1 or 2 classmates, and then you are given kind of like awarded a point value. And sometimes, I might be speaking out of turn here because I do not teach classes at LBC, but sometimes discussion posts in other places I've been, they'll be like complete, incomplete. That is not the case at LBC. You are given a point value, but that's how you're evaluated, essentially. Okay. Any questions about that assignment? I know I kind of just threw a lot at you. Did that make sense when we were looking at all the components? When we first looked at the assignment versus at the end of the assignment, did you see like, oh, okay, things are starting to clear up a little bit? Hopefully you did. I'm hoping that was kind of evident in breaking it down. Okay. So let's talk about some tools and some strategies. So these are things that you can do when you leave here tonight, okay? When you go to open up that next assignment, here's some practical tips you can use. The first one, and this is kind of, I think the most important one, is to create checklists. So use the instructions to create a to-do checklist so that you can work towards completing the assignment. And I'll show you what that would look like with the assignment that we just broke down here in a minute. Another strategy is to employ good time management. Based on that assignment checklist, how much time do you need to complete this assignment? Okay, at the top of your assignments, it's going to give you an estimated amount of time it'll take to complete. It may not take that long. It may take longer. It just depends. Okay, but you need to kind of be able to look and say, okay, here's everything I need to do for this assignment. I think it's going to take me 3 hours. And just having an awareness of time and employing good time management skills is going to be invaluable, right? That's the key to success. I tell my daughter this all the time. I have a sophomore in high school. Time management, right? That's the key. And I'll talk briefly about this. Chat GPT. I know you're like, what? Did you just talk about AI and education? But using AI responsibly to help you interpret assignment instructions is that falls under that category of ethical uses of AI. I'm not going to get into that much more than that tonight, but we do have coming down the pipeline a workshop on ethical uses of AI, and I think it's going to be a good one. So stay tuned for that here in the next few months. Okay, so that task checklist, that was the first strategy that I just mentioned. So that assignment that we just looked at, okay, here's the task checklist I've created from it. And if I go forward one slide, this kind of puts it side to side for you. All right, so assignment, how does college level writing look? That's the title of the assignment. All right, first thing I need to do is read 2 sample essays or articles on the Roman Empire. And then I need to take note of ineffective and effective writing that I observe in those 2 articles. And then in my initial post, I need to answer the bulleted questions from the prompt. And if I look there, it's list 3 characteristics of effective writing, 3 characteristics of ineffective writing, explain why these traits are worth your classmates' consideration, explain why these traits are, or why I believe they're ineffective. And then the last task I need to do to finish this assignment is to respond to the post of 2 of my classmates. Okay, so literally by identifying those 6 assignment components, okay, and knowing that what's the purpose, what's the task, okay, et cetera, I can come up with a checklist, right, that kind of summarizes what I'm being asked to do in about 2 minutes, okay? Don't be afraid to do that. And like, I know when I was going through school, when I was going through school for my master's degree, it was a program very similar to LBC, just back-to-back 8-week classes, right? All online. And so I kind of got into the habit of printing out my assignments because I just needed them. I needed a hard copy. And then what I would do is in the margins, I would create little checklists like this. And that really, really helped me, especially when you have assignments that are kind of multifaceted like this one. So don't be afraid to do that. That's probably the most helpful strategy I can give you, is to create a checklist for your assignments. Okay, the next aspect, the next tool or strategy that I talked about was time management. These are just all suggestions. There are so many different ways that you can manage your time effectively. And it's kind of that case of like, there's so much good out there that sometimes it's hard to pick what works for you, or you can't take advantage of it all, right? You have to pick what works for you. But by and large, breaking large assignments down into smaller tasks, okay? That's kind of what we just did right here. Okay, we broke this large discussion prompt assignment down into, okay, first I'm going to read this, then I'm going to take notes, then I'm going to do my initial post, and then I'm going to respond to my classmates. If it's an essay that you're doing, right? And you'll notice this, especially in FAS 100 and LAN 100, you'll notice that the assignments are kind of broken down for you in small, manageable tasks weekly, okay? Yes, and to answer the question in the chat, yes, I will be sharing this presentation. I'll email it out to everyone tomorrow after I get the video posted. But in breaking down large assignments, so okay, first, you know, my final product is going to be this research paper, okay? All right, well, first I'm going to conduct the research, and then I'm going to create my outline, and then I'm going to draft my paper, and then I'm going to revise it. And so breaking these big assignments down into smaller, more manageable chunks is pretty effective. Another thing you can do as far as time management goes is prioritize your tasks by difficulty or prioritize your tasks by value, right? What's the biggest assignment, the most valuable assignment I need to get done this week? Or prioritize it by due date, okay? Essentially, what I'm saying here is to prioritize your tasks one bite at a time. I like to say to my high school students, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, okay? You just chip away, but you don't ever stop, right? You just chip away. Prioritize. That's going to be beneficial. Time blocking. So most of you in here are working adults. You have families. You have other priorities. Maybe there's a ministry that you're involved in that you are responsible for. There's just lots, right? Lots on your plate. So dedicating some specific uninterrupted time to work on assignments, even if it's just 5 minutes, okay? 5 minutes is better than no minutes. Hopefully you'll have longer uninterrupted periods of time, but time blocking, okay? In the Ally time management resources, there is a wonderful technique. It's called the Pomodoro technique. And essentially the idea is to work for 25 minutes and then break for 5 minutes. And what this does is really help you maintain focus. I do that during my work day. I'll work for an hour and then I get up and I don't know, I might take my dog out, just take him outside for a minute, walk around my driveway, come back in, just something to get that blood flowing, to get different, scenery, just to take a brain break from whatever you're doing. You can set mini deadlines. So, okay, I'm going to have my outline done by Monday. I'm going to have my introduction written by Tuesday. If we're using that example assignment from FAS 100, okay, I'm going to read the 2 Roman Empire essays by Monday or on Monday. On Tuesday, I'm going to take notes. On Wednesday, I'm going to do my initial post because that's when it's due, right? You can break it down into like these little mini deadlines and set them for yourself to hold yourself accountable. And then accountability in general, share your timeline with somebody to stay on track. And maybe that is somebody in your household, right? Maybe it's somebody at your work. Maybe it's someone in your class. I know last subterm, there were 2 students and they just kind of hit it off and became great friends in their class, even though they were both in totally separate places because, this is online. But they were accountability buddies in a sense with the assignments, and it just worked out really well for them. And then there we go. The last tool or strategy is AI, right? And I am not claiming to be a knowledgeable guru on AI because I'm not. However, I do recognize that it is here. It's not going anywhere, okay? We can use it responsibly, okay? We can use it with integrity and we can use it in ways that glorify the Lord instead of, ways that are just kind of, I don't know, disingenuous. So here are some examples of responsible AI use, okay? So, okay, you're reading this assignment, you're like, I don't understand, it's so long and complicated and convoluted. Well, okay, type the assignment into ChatGPT. Okay? Use AI to help you understand the assignment question. Use AI to help you brainstorm ideas for an assignment. Use it to help simplify complex concepts, okay? Use it to help create some sort of assessment outline. In other words, based on this assignment, what components do I need to make sure I include in my final product? However, I want you to also consider, okay, when using AI, you always want to consider first and foremost academic integrity, right? You want to make sure that you are not plagiarizing, whether it's intentional or unintentional. I mean, a lot of plagiarism is unintentional, right? But there is some that's very intentional. So we just always want to consider academic integrity when we're using AI. Another thing, and this is something that again, I'm teaching my younger students, but accuracy and quality, okay? Things that AI generates are not always accurate because it is merely a reflection of a bunch of information it receives, okay? So if it receives inaccurate information, it may spit out inaccurate information. And I know I'm really like simplifying how AI works, but that's just an important consideration. It is it is a machine. It is a tool. Okay. It's not going to necessarily be accurate or high quality. And then data sharing, this is something I hadn't considered, but whenever you use AI, there's which, we all have the cell phones and, our data is being shared routinely, but it's just a consideration, right? That you want to keep in mind when you're using AI. Now, I've got some resources for you. The Ally Center, all of these things I've talked about tonight, as far as time management, as far as checklists, as far as especially the time management piece and the writing, but the Ally Center, the Writing Center, that's what we do. We specialize in writing. And so if at any point in time, I have so many students who book 30-minute appointments with me and they're like, I've got these 3 assignments. I just want to make sure I'm understanding them correctly. And so they'll share their screen with me. We'll go over the assignment. I'll clarify their questions, or I'll say, okay, here's what this is what this assignment is asking you to do. And that's it, right? And that's why we're here. It's not just to proofread essays or, I don't know. We're here for so many different reasons. And understanding writing and assignment prompts is one of those big reasons. Undergrad, grad, doctoral student, any writing task that you may have or need, that's us, okay? We also offer tutoring at the Ally Center. And so this is in the form of academic mentoring, right? So understanding writing and assignment prompts is part of that. Time management, all of those time management techniques I shared with you. We have so many online resources in the Ally Center that you can use. That's that Pomodoro technique, the work for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break. We have a little short video resource. We've got some informational resources. We've got calendars, right, that you can use to block off your time, to evaluate where you're spending your time. That was eye-opening for me. I thought I didn't have time to do a lot of things, and it turns out I have plenty of time. I was just not being very efficient with my time. And then office hours. Office hours, they could be virtual. They would be virtual for you guys. If you were on campus, they'd be in person. But don't be afraid to ask your professor, hey, do you have virtual office hours? I know most classes are going to have like a live in-person, not in-person, but a live session every week. But your professor may have virtual office hours above and beyond that. Okay. Don't be afraid to ask for that, because that's going to help you if you're having trouble understanding the assignments. Okay. I'm going to leave you with some Q&A time here. So Q&A time, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen momentarily. What questions do we have? I know some of you were, oh yeah, you were telling me you're in LAN 100, LAN 101. What questions do you have? And you may not have questions, that's okay. But if you do, I'm here. Any questions? Oh, I thought you were going to ask me a question, Marvina.
No, I just said, okay, we're all in black boxes. Let me just get on now.
Give me a face to look at.
Yes. So no question.
That's fine. That's
But
totally okay.
Those 2 I did LAN 101, 100. Those classes already.
Yes. Yeah. Well, then let me leave you with this one last question. Let me get my screen shared here. Let me go. Sorry, I got to move something around here. You guys can't see that part. Let me leave you with this question. This is the last thing I have for you. What is one tip that you'll use on your next assignment? One tip that you've learned that you'll use on your next assignment.
I personally will definitely use the checklist where you sit down and write down the directions step by step by step, because I really think that's going to help me a lot. Now, our professor actually suggested last night or yesterday to copy and paste them in a separate window and have them up in the corner while you're working. And I think that's a great idea.
That is a great idea. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Somebody shared in the chat identifying the verbs. So yes, sometimes just identifying the verbs, I mean, I'm telling you, like, it's revolutionary. You don't realize how helpful just when you were like, oh, right, review, analyze, I don't know. Anybody else? What's one tip that you'll use on your next assignment?
Hi, it's Jean again. I think I would be analyzing it, like breaking it down into more of the part, how
Mm-hmm.
you're getting there with the blue and the red in that, and then
Yeah.
looking at curves and looking at, who our audience is and just like that. So
Yeah.
breaking everything down of what it's supposed to be.
Right. Yes. I love that. Okay. Oh, the Pomodoro technique. Somebody commented in the chat. I forgot the name of it, but the study work tool. Yeah. Yes. To work for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break. I'm telling you, it's a brain break. You need a brain break, you know? One of my daughters she's teaching herself to crochet by watching these tutorials. It's amazing what kids can do now with like YouTube videos, just learning. Anyway, and she was trying some specific, it's called a magic circle for days. And she was so frustrated. And I mean, there were a couple times where she was like, throwing the stuff down. And she put it down for 2 days and came back to it. And now she's like whipping up these little magic circles like crazy. And she's like, I just think I needed to walk away from it. And that's essentially the Pomodoro technique, right? You work for that 25 minutes and then you walk away for 5, right? Give yourself that brain break. That is okay. Anything else that anybody wants to share before we close for tonight? Time management. Yes. So someone says time management is the tool I need most, yet it's not one of my strengths. Any advice? So when I send out the video link for this and these slides, I will also send you links to in our library, LibGuides for the Ally Center. We have a time management resource. I will send a link to that as well and show you there's some wonderful time management tools in there. And then if any of you were to, sorry, let me adjust something on my screen here and I can show you guys maybe. If any of you, and I'll share my screen momentarily, I have to get where I'm going. Hold on. If you go to the Ally Center and let me share my screen again. So this is in reference to what somebody said about time management. So right now, this is the library website. And if you go to, and I'll send you the links to all this. If you go to undergraduate writing resources, and then the resource videos, this is a list of links to every single workshop the Ally Center has done in the past, I don't even know, 5 years maybe. There are so many good workshops here, several on time management, procrastination, avoiding burnout, that sort of thing. This taking control of your time, that's a wonderful resource. But if you don't want to watch a video, you can also go to research, guys, hang on, I got to navigate. Academic mentoring resources. And if I go right here to productivity and time management, okay? So purpose and goals, calendars and productivity. This is the page where you'll see so many links. So here's a semester calendar, okay? Some of these are kind of geared towards the on-campus students, but you can absolutely use these as an online student. This is a semester calendar where they have highlighted, right? Each class is color-coded. They've written important due dates down for the whole semester. If that's a little overwhelming and you don't need that, level of time management, you can also go to the ideal weekly calendar. Again, I will put this link. Okay. So this is the resource that I was telling you guys that blew my mind when I used it because I thought I had no extra time. And it turns out I had a lot of extra time. I just wasn't using it wisely. And this is what helped me identify that. So this is essentially a weekly time block. You go through, like, let's say you work 8 to 5, okay, Monday through Friday. So 8 to 5 is blocked out for work. But within that 8 to 5, you have an hour lunch, okay? So can you block in, let's say 8 to noon, your lunch is from noon to 1, and from 12 to 12:30 you eat your lunch, and from 12:30 to 1 you work on assignments, okay? And then after you get done with work, right, you come home, there's dinner, There's, what we all have different responsibilities, but you fill this in according to your schedule. Okay. Where do you have, excuse me, snippets of time that you could squeeze in an extra 10, 15 minutes of schoolwork? Okay. This is a great resource. There's also sorry, my menu is in my way. Okay. My Zoom menu, which you guys can't see, is blocking me. And I want it to go away. There we go. Okay. Oh, all right. I am pulling the plug on this. Just know that they're there, and I will send you the links to them. There's another document that is it's a time assessment, right? It's a time evaluation, and so it has you calculate, okay, how many hours of sleep do I get a day? Multiply that times 7. How many hours a week do I work? Multiply that times 7, or a day do I work? And then it kind of gives you an idea of, I have this many hours. Here's how many hours I have left over. And then just it helps walk you through how you can productively use the free time that you do have towards your goals, right? Those goals might be your class, those goals might be ministry, but how can I use my time more effectively? And I saw there was another chat. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss it. Okay, nope, I didn't miss it. So yeah, to those of you who struggle with time management, just know you're not the only one. And I will send you links to that LibGuide that has all the time management calendars. Peruse them, see which one you think would work well for you, and just experiment with it. So, any other questions? That's all I have for you tonight. And I am so glad that you guys came out here. I hope that something I talked about was valuable to you and that you walked away with a tool that you can use. I'm just so glad to see all of you and to get to meet those of you I haven't met before. And I just thank you. I thank you so much.
It all was definitely